Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Unknown beast in the Belize jungle. My wife and I have just returned from a trip to Belize. Kind of like a second honeymoon, so we spent most of our time on the coast and in Belize City. It was very enjoyable and I recommend Belize as a vacation spot. We used one of our days to visit Humanoids, the ancient Mayan ruins west of Belize City. I am into the paranormal and like to visit historical sites known for strange activity. Humanoids is Mayan for stone woman. In the past, there have been sightings of a woman, dressed in white, ascending the stairs of the El Castillo Temple Pyramid. She is said to have red eyes and disappears within the stone walls of the structure. We had hired a private guide who told us that some people believed that the stone woman had been sacrificed, and that she appears when the energy is high at the temple. He told us that in his 15 years as a guide that he had briefly seen her once while with a tour group, after someone pointed her out to him. He said the woman was dressed in a long white traditional tunic, and that she had black hair. He later took us to the spot where he had seen her. As we stood on a grassy ledge on the temple, there was a loud crashing sound coming from the jungle below us. We could see small trees being pushed about as this thing moved through the thick vegetation. I looked at the guide, and he had a confused and fearful look on his face. He said that we need move in the opposite direction. We descended the steps and walked quickly towards the plaza area where the tour jeep was parked. When we reached the vehicle, he made a call to someone on his radio. I don't speak Spanish, but my wife said that it sounded like the guide said, "Cow." Well, there is no way all that noise was caused by a cow or even several cows. We got into the vehicle and waited for the driver. After a few minutes, he arrived and we headed back to Belize City. I asked the driver about what we had experienced and if he had any idea what it could have been. He said he wasn't familiar with any animal that big in the jungle. To me, it seemed he wasn't being completely honest, but I dropped the subject. The next day, I got online to see if anything that big was known to inhabit the Belize jungles. I found a brief mention of a cave cow, a type of legendary large ground sloth that was said to live there. That's all I found. Since my wife thought the guide said cow when he was on the radio, that may be what he was referring to. Neither of us saw what this creature looked like, only that it had to have been very large and powerful. If I find anything further, I promise to contact you. Maybe a reader can submit an explanation. Gary.
Strange and unknown creature encounter. This happened to me on Saturday, July 5, 2008 at around 4:40 a.m. I witnessed a strange creature as I drove south on North Holly Road towards Holly, Michigan. This event lasted about 10 seconds and occurred when I was about a mile away from Grange Hall Road. I was coming back from dropping off a volunteer that I work with at an arts center in Davison. I didn't drink anything and wasn't on any medication or illegal drugs. I was drinking soda and I didn't feel that tired, even though it was late. My speed was slower than the posted limit, about 45 miles per hour, and my brights on. I do this so I can be prepared in case a deer decides to cross my path. No other vehicles were present. As I was driving, I slowed down because there appeared to be a very large creature digging in someone's trash next to the right side of the road. It was located 20 to 25 feet away from my car. I began to slow down to get a better look. This thing was really tall and too huge to be any average animal that I normally see in roadside trash bins at night. My first thought that came to mind was, what is it? I remember calling out words of animals in my head to determine what this thing could be. I thought, rat, no too big. Kangaroo, it's gray. Red eyes. Rabbit, no, not a cat. It jumps and leaps kind of like a rabbit. I don't know what I'm looking at. Can be a chupacabra. Could it? In Michigan. This creature was holding a piece of trash and didn't appear to have paws. More slender hand-wise. It had huge, round and red glowing eyes. It reacted and looked kind of surprised to see me, as if it thought no one will ever find out that it existed. That was my impression. Its eyes just stared at my vehicle while holding onto a piece of trash for nearly 4 seconds. Its triangular-like gray face reminded me of a dog, but it was more pointed and triangular towards the end of the nose and mouth. Its presence didn't seem ordinary, and those gigantic glowing red eyes made me feel something was out of place here. Its ears were large and rounded, sort of like a mouse. Its arms were bendable and closer to its body than its long flexible legs. The body was heavier in the bottom, and kind of reminded me of a kangaroo body, but it was completely gray. Maybe, gray short-haired fur. I am not sure, but the body was definitely gray in color. It had a skinny tail that was similar in appearance to a rat's tail, but it was much longer and slightly wider. I barely noticed the creature's tail until it maneuvered out of the way from the garbage can. In summary, this is the way the creature reacted when I came upon it. I noticed the creature digging in the garbage and it was holding a piece of trash. It stared at me for 3 to 4 seconds, then dropped the trash forcefully like a human would with both hands. It was standing upright and appeared to be over 3 feet tall in height. The creature bent down to the ground and jumped forward on all fours, then got up a bit and turned to the left to aim for the woods. It reached for the ground again with its front arms, and jumped forward with its back legs swinging in front of it like a rabbit. The creature didn't make any sounds that I could hear even with my windows open, and it didn't try to attack me or hiss at me. When the event was over, I wanted to turn around and find out what that thing was. I knew that would not be a good idea. My gut tells me that this thing had to be a chupacabra. I look up a chupacabra on the internet. The next day I discovered a photo that was taken by a rancher in 2004 that shot and killed one. The creature in that photo looked very similar to the one I witnessed, except the dead animal had less flesh on its bones, and I couldn't see slender hands, but it was hard to tell from the photo. I was planning on getting some land so I could let my pet cat out at night, but now there is a change of plans. I later reported my encounter to the local police, who really didn't seem interested. JK.
Terrifying geometric-shaped humanoid in Northern California. A few years back, I had a weird encounter behind my house. There's a bunch of trees and manzanita bushes behind my house, typical Northern California flora. My black lab was outside around 11:30 p.m. when she let out the most scared-sounding bark I've ever heard. I went out to see what she was barking at and started shining my flashlight around. I didn't initially see anything. The dog barked again, and I caught sight of the humanoid creature as it shifted positions. It was maybe 15 feet away from me. The encounter lasted probably 2 minutes. The creature was very geometric and generally thin. Its body was rectangular, maybe 2 feet across, long and vertically oriented. No tapering at either the hip or shoulder. It was partially rounded on the edges, but I would hesitate to describe it as being cylindrical. Its arms seemed longer than its legs, though I admit it could have been crouching. Depending on whether it was crouching or not, I would say it was most likely between 5 and 7 feet tall. At the end of each thin arm was a hand with 6 fingers, long, almost bony. 3 of the fingers were really thick, while the other 3 were much thinner. It had a thin neck, thinner than its arms. Its head is the part that really freaked me out. It was as wide as its body, and totally featureless. No face, no ears, nothing indicating the presence of eyes or a mouth. The head was wider at the top than the bottom, still possessing that rectangular cylindrical appearance as the body. Its overall appearance was unnaturally smooth, its lines were too straight, and the exterior was an incredible shiny black color. I shined my light on the creature more directly, and in spite of not appearing to have any eyes, it seemed to hone in on the flashlight beam, sort of tilting its head and partially pulling itself from behind the tall grass and fallen limb it had been near. It made no sound when it moved, even though I could see the grass moving and see a rather large branch snap as it shifted its weight. I couldn't tell if it thought I was predator or prey, or if it even thought about me at all. At this point, I decided I didn't want to stick around to find out what it was doing or why. I am very scientifically minded. I seek to find the rational explanation for things before entertaining the notion that it could be a supernatural phenomenon. I probably would have discounted the whole thing as my eyes playing tricks on me in the dark had my dog not been so visibly perturbed by the encounter. I've never seen her shake like that. There are deer, mountain lions, coyotes, all kinds of animals around my house. She doesn't care about any of them. Whatever this was left her scared to go outside for several days afterward. I wouldn't describe the encounter as negative. Terrifying, yes, but the unknown often is. I haven't seen the creature again. I still get goosebumps every time I think about it. Has anyone ever seen anything like this creature I've described? I'd love to get some opinions on the encounter. I saw the branch snap. The creature had a hand on it, and when it shifted its position, the branch snapped away from the limb it was attached to. It made no sound when it snapped. I could hear my breathing, the sounds of insects behind me back up toward the house, and the sound of passing cars on my street. The dog was barking, and I could hear her movements. But the creature itself, as well as anything near it or behind where it stood, made no sound whatsoever. AH.
Creature in the tree. When I was a little boy, I lived in a tiny 2-bedroom house with my parents and 4 siblings. One night my brother and I were standing at the front window staring outside as it rained. This was a strangely quiet moment for the two of us, despite the lightning and thunder. We just stood there, mesmerized by the patter of the raindrops against a cold glass, drawn to the troubled sky. The greatest part of our attention, however, was focused on the tree. There was only one tree in our front yard, a cruel-looking rotted thing that never had any leaves. This particular night the wind had whipped it into a horrible frenzy, its spindly black branches raging against a storm, as though it resented every stinging drop of rain. Wordlessly we stood, just far enough away from the glass to keep from fogging it. All at once, a terrific streak of lightning lit up the sky, and in the branches, staring down at us was a deformed creature the likes of which I'd never seen. Now, all of these realizations came at the same time. 1. It was solid. 2. It stood on 2 feet, on one particular branch, at one particular part of the tree. 3. It knew we were there. 4. My brother saw it too. 5. I was, simultaneously, seeing it through my own eyes and my brother's eyes, and it was not the same. To me, the thing appeared to be a grotesque caricature of a farmer, a flattened down, deformed cartoon farmer wearing a flannel shirt, overalls, and a head-splitting grin, holding a metal pitchfork at his right side. At the same time, I was aware that what my brother saw in the very same space at the very same time was a similarly deformed caricature of a skeleton, with thick bones and empty eye sockets. The lightning flickered and blinked out, and in the fraction of a second it took to get used to the dim glow of the far-off clouds that backlit the tree, it became clear there was no longer anything there. When one receives a shock that is so tremendous that it surpasses tears, like a spectacular blow to the head, or the unexpected snapping of a bone, there is only the wait. The wait until the violence washes over you. Will you feel pain? Will you lose consciousness? There is only the wait. My head filled with heavy rushing blood that battered the insides of my eardrums. In an excruciatingly slow movement I turned to my brother at my side, my eyes leaving the tree and traveling in an arc that cut across the fence, the porch posts, the window frame, the wall, and finally his face. In his eyes was reflected all the fullness of my experience. We didn't say a thing to each other. There was no need. I was only 6 or 7. In the years that followed I have seen nothing remotely like the thing in the tree. My father eventually cut the tree down. Why, I don't know. We never did tell him.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.